Welcome to the deep dive. Ever feel like the English you learned, maybe from books, sounds a little, well, different from what you actually hear people speaking?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a really common experience for language learners, I think.
Yeah, you study all the rules, the vocabulary, you get that down, but then real conversation, it flows differently.
Exactly. It's like you have the sheet music, but then there's the live performance, which has all this, energy and improvisation almost. The rules get bent a little.
That's a great analogy. And today, we're kind of unpacking that gap. We're looking at a really helpful YouTube video from Keith at the Keith Speaking Academy and English Speaking Success.
Keith's stuff is great.
Yeah, this one's called Speak English Like a Native Speaker in 20 Minutes. So our mission really is to pull out the key ideas from Keith's video, give you some practical examples, and help you understand and maybe use more natural-sounding English yourself.
Sounds good. It's a fascinating area.
Okay, let's dive in then. So Keith kicks things off by highlighting this difference between written and spoken English. He even mentions, based on his experience learning French, that the gap in English might actually be bigger.
That's a really interesting point. And what's key here is just how much these shortcuts happen in everyday speech. We're not always saying every single sound perfectly clearly.
Right.
We connect words, we shorten them. Sometimes whole words just vanish. It makes speech fluid, fast, but, it can be tough for learners at first. Getting a handle on these really helps listening and speaking.
He gives some quick examples right away, like I get up, sounding more like one smooth phrase, I get up.
Or the classic, I will becoming I'll. Everyone knows that one.
Exactly. But he says it goes deeper than just those obvious ones.
Where would help?
He talks about sounds being added or dropped or even changing completely when words link together.
Yeah, and the idea of leaving whole words out, that can be surprising.
Like his example, I'm going to the pub, coming, instead of the full are you coming?
Precisely. I mean, if you think about how language works, spoken language always kind of drifts towards efficiency. We want speed, ease. We rely on context a lot.
Whereas written language is more explicit,
Yeah.
maybe more formal.
Definitely tends that way, yeah.
Okay, so let's get into some of the specific pronunciation changes Keith points out. First one, asking about someone's job. What do you do? How does that usually sound?
You'll often hear that slide into something like, what do you do? See how that you just softens to a quick yeah?
Right. What do you do?
Much quicker.
More economical, yeah. Saves a bit of effort.
Okay. And another very common one, what do you want? He mentions a little change with the final T here.
Yes. That T in want often gets dropped, especially in faster speech. And again, the do you becomes ya, so you get what do you want?
What do you want?
And Keith makes a good point about context affecting the feel of it. Sometimes it can sound a bit abrupt, maybe a little annoyed, or like a boss being very direct.
Yeah, I can see that. Tone matters a lot there. But then he contrasts it, doesn't he? Like, among friends, maybe ordering drinks, what do you want, is completely normal. It's casual.
Right, compared to the more polite or formal, what was like.
That shows register, how we switch our language depending on who we're talking to in the situation. In informal chats, what do you want is often just standard.
Okay, moving on. What are you doing? Another one that gets the spoken treatment.
Yes. That frequently becomes, what you doing? Or maybe, what you doing? The are you kind of squishes together.
What you doing? Yeah.
And often that final G in doing gets softened or dropped too, especially in really relaxed speech. Doing.
And Keith mentions its synonym, what are you up to? Undergoes a similar change.
Yep, same pattern. What are you up to becomes, what you up to? Or what you're up to.
What you up to? Got it.
Very common casual greeting, that one.
And for those times you're out, maybe ordering food or drinks, the question, what are you having?
In a bar or a restaurant, yeah, you'll probably hear what you having. Same thing. Are you goes to ya. Final G softens. Having.
What you having? Okay, so that pattern with are you becoming ya or cha is pretty consistent.
Very much so. It's one of the most common reductions.
All right, let's shift focus slightly to present tense questions that start with do you. Keith uses do you want a coffee as his example. What happens there?
Okay, so do you want a coffee? Very often becomes do you want a coffee? See how do you want it to kind of melts together into wanna.
Do you want a coffee? Yeah, I hear that all the time.
And he points out that the U sound itself can soften too, almost like a J sound, like in judge. So it's like, do you want a coffee? Or do you want a coffee?
You want a coffee? Okay, and he gives practice examples too, right? Like, do you want a tea?
Would become, do you want a tea?
Or do you want a Coca-Cola?
Do you want a Coca-Cola?
Yeah.
Same pattern. It just flows much more easily than saying every word distinctly.
But then he contrasts it again with the more polite version, would you like a coffee?
Right. And interestingly, while would you can sometimes reduce slightly, maybe to would ya, the like a part tends to stay pretty clear. Would you like a coffee? Doesn't collapse quite as much as do you want a coffee?
Okay, that makes sense. Now, this next bit was quite fun, the story of the three bears.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Not Goldilocks bears, though.
No. Their names were Does-he, Was-he, and Has-he.
Hmm.
What was the point of this little story?
It's a memorable way to show how the H sound often gets weakened or just disappears completely when we ask questions with he in spoken English.
Okay, so the first bear, does-he? Like in does he like it?
Exactly. That becomes does he like it.
Yeah.
The H is basically gone or very, very weak. The S sound from does links right into the vowel. Does he?
Does he like it? Wow. Okay, another example is like, does he want it? Would be.
Does he want it?
And does he have it?
Does he have it?
Yeah.
It's a really common pattern. Recognizing that dropped H is super helpful for understanding past speech.
Okay, then the second bear, was he, for past tense questions, was he happy, becomes.
Was he happy? Again, the S sound blends into the vowel, the H vanishes, creating that Z sound, was he.
So was he sad is was he sad.
Yep.
And was he upset is was he upset.
Got it. And the last bear, has he, linking past and present. Has he called you? Often sounds like.
Hazy called you, same deal. The preceding sound kind of overrides the H, hazy.
Right. So, has he come is hazy come. And has he sent you a message yet becomes has he sent you a message yet.
Exactly. They seem like tiny changes, but as Keith points out, they make a huge difference to the rhythm and flow of spoken English.
Yeah, being aware of them must really help your listening skills.
Absolutely. And maybe trying them out yourself can make your own speech sound a bit more natural over time.
Now, here's a question that comes up all the time for learners, especially if they're doing exams like IELTS. Are contractions like wanna and gonna actually okay to use in, say, the speaking test?
That's such a common worry, and Keith gives a very clear answer. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, think about it. Wanna for want to, gonna for going to. They have fundamental parts of natural, everyday spoken English. The IELTS speaking test is trying to see how well you can communicate naturally.
So using them is actually good?
It's not just acceptable, it's often expected if you want to sound fluent and natural rather than, like you're reading from a textbook.
He does add an important note about gonna, though, doesn't he? About not adding another to.
Oh, yeah, crucial point. Gonna already includes the to, so it's I'm gonna go, full stop.
Not I'm gonna go.
No, never. That's redundant. So correct examples are like, I'm gonna come, I'm gonna visit you, I'm gonna have a coffee.
Okay. And wanna is simply want to. So I want to go. I want to visit you.
Exactly. And he quickly covers a few others, too, like should we, often becoming a softer should we, maybe.
As in, should we go? Or should we have a coffee? Like making a suggestion.
Yeah, a really natural way to suggest doing something together.
And then thinking about the past. Regret, maybe. Should have gone. How does that sound?
That really compresses down to shoulda gone.
Should have gone.
Yeah, shoulda, woulda, coulda. They're very common. So should have becomes shoulda.
And could have gone, like a possibility you didn't take.
Becomes coulda gone. He emphasizes that kind of coulda sound.
Could have gone, like his example, I could have visited Paris, but I didn't.
I could have visited Paris. Yeah. Recognizing those coulda, shoulda, woulda forms is really key for understanding past hypotheticals or regrets in conversation.
Okay, this all leads into a really important point Keith makes near the end, which is about setting realistic goals.
Yes, this is so important. He really stresses that you don't need to sound exactly like a quote-unquote perfect native speaker.
Which can be a relief to hear, I think.
Totally. Even really advanced learners, people at C2 level, might still have traces of an accent or just sound slightly different, and that's completely normal and okay. Their English is still proficient.
Chasing that perfect native model can be frustrating, maybe even counterproductive.
It really can. It sets an often unattainable standard and can cause a lot of anxiety.
So what's the better focus then?
Well, like Keith suggests, the aim should be improving your pronunciation for clear communication, making sure people understand you easily. And yes, that can help with test scores too.
But enjoyment and practice are key, not perfection.
Exactly. Enjoying the process, practicing regularly, and also just recognizing all these features we've talked about, the wanna, gonna, doesy, wuzzy, that massively boosts your listening comprehension too. You start hearing what's actually being said.
Absolutely. Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive today. Understanding these nuances, these differences between written English and how it's actually spoken, it can really help bridge that gap, can it?
It really can. Knowing about the connected speech, the contractions, the sounds that shift or disappear, it helps you make sense of what you hear, and it gives you tools to make your own speech sound more, well, natural.
What's fascinating is how even just becoming aware of these small shifts can make a big difference.
It opens up your listening and maybe gives you confidence to experiment a little when you speak.
So we'd encourage you, as you listen to English, start trying to notice these things. Hear the wanna, the gonna, the linked words.
Yeah, listen out for them. And maybe, just maybe, try using one or two yourself in a low-pressure situation. See how it feels.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to consider. How might tuning into these sort of subtle rhythms and sounds of spoken English actually unlock deeper understanding and maybe even better connections when you talk with people?
It's really about moving beyond just the words on the page, isn't it? Engaging with English as a living, breathing, dynamic thing, that's where the real fluency lies, I think. So, have you ever been in that situation where you, like, feel you're only getting bits and pieces of what's being said?
Oh, definitely.
Like trying to, I don't know, grab water with your
Yeah,
hands?
exactly. Or maybe the other way around. You know exactly what you want to say,
Mm-hmm.
but getting those thoughts out clearly feels like, well, like trying to untangle a knot or something.
Right. Well, we're diving into exactly that today. We're looking at how we can maybe sharpen both our listening and speaking kind of at the same time.
That's right. We've been looking into some really fascinating insights from a language learning expert,
It's okay.
and their approach really emphasizes how listening and speaking aren't totally separate skills, you know? They're
Yeah.
more like two sides of the same coin.
Ah, I like that.
So yeah, we'll be focusing on understanding two core types of strategies that seem to make a real difference.
And our goal here really is to get beyond just like talking about the theory.
Right.
We want to give you some concrete, actionable techniques, stuff you can actually use, hopefully leading to those little aha moments we all look for,
hmm
ultimately making you feel, well, more confident and just more effective when you communicate.
And what's particularly interesting, I think, is this central idea that improving our language skills really hinges on using a mix, a combination of top-down and bottom-up strategies.
Top down and bottom up. Okay.
Yeah, it's about how we approach language from two different but definitely complementary directions.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's start with top down. The expert used a pretty good image for this, thinking about it like a bird's eye view. What does that mean when we're talking about listening?
Essentially, yeah, top-down listening is about grasping the overall meaning first. You know, the main idea, the gist of what's being communicated,
Right.
without getting too bogged down in every single word right away.
Okay.
It's like looking at a landscape from above. You see the big features, the overall shape, even if you can't make out every little stone or tree on the ground.
Ah, yeah. Like that saying, can't see the wood for the trees.
Exactly. That's precisely the idea. You get so focused on the tiny details, the individual words, that you lose the bigger picture, the main message.
So how do we, actually do that? Put this bird's eye view into practice when we're listening.
Well, one key way is to actively use what you already know, your existing knowledge, and importantly, the context around the communication.
Context, right?
Yeah. To illustrate this, our expert source provided a short audio clip and some takeaways.
Yeah.
Let's think about the description first.
Okay, what strikes me just hearing about it is how much we can figure out even before we really dig into the words. Like the setting a priest talking to a congregation that immediately sets a certain frame, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That context is huge. So even if you didn't catch every single word of the clip,
Mm-hmm.
hearing keywords like faith, America, amen, and then interestingly, coffin, okay, it gives you a strong sense of the overall topic, right?
Yeah.
Probably some kind of motivational message, maybe touching on death, maybe even using a bit of dark humor to make a point.
It's amazing how just a few of those key words combined with the context can unlock the main idea.
It really is.
And I guess this leads straight into that second top-down strategy you mentioned.
Yeah.
Really paying attention to the context before you even start listening properly.
That's it exactly. This could be, say, the title of a talk you're about to hear, or any pictures or visuals that go with it,
Yeah.
or even just knowing where you are and who you're talking to.
Mm.
All these things give you valuable clues. They help you anticipate the kind of language you might hear and the main ideas that are likely to come up.
Right. Like the expert described another scenario, visually suggesting a hospital operating room. You see people in white coats.
Hmm.
Just seeing that image primes you for a certain kind of conversation, doesn't it? Let's hear what the expert thought about the dialogue that happened there.
So in that case, you've got the hospital setting, right? Then combine that with hearing keywords like psychiatry, consent, operate, surgery.
Okay, yeah.
It lets you pretty quickly form a hypothesis about what's going on,
Mm.
probably doctors discussing a patient, the upcoming surgery, maybe some issues around consent or something similar.
It really is incredible how much we can figure out with just a little bit of context and a few key terms. It makes you think, though. How does this understanding, this bigger picture view, how does that help our own speaking?
That's a really good question because it definitely connects. If you think about it, having that sort of bird's eye view of the conversation you're in or the topic you want to talk about,
Yeah.
it helps you as the speaker too. It lets you organize your own thoughts more effectively,
Yeah.
choose the right kind of words, make sure your listener can actually follow your main point.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've looked at seeing the whole forest from above. Now let's zoom in. Let's talk about these bottom-up strategies. This sounds more like focusing on the individual trees.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to put it. Bottom-up strategies are all about focusing on the specific details of the language itself to build up your understanding piece by piece.
Okay.
And this becomes really crucial when you hit new information, like maybe a new character is introduced in a story,
Right.
or there's a sudden plot twist, or you need to catch specific details like names, numbers, maybe some technical terms.
Gotcha. So how do we do that?
Well, our expert source highlighted 3 key bottom-up techniques. The first one is about noticing stressed words.
Stressed words. Okay, I think this is something a lot of language learners might not consciously think about.
Right. And what's interesting is that in English, we naturally put more emphasis, more stress on certain words, usually the important ones, the content words, like nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs.
Mhm.
Whereas the little grammatical words, they often get less stress. Sometimes they sound quite reduced, even scroshed.
Can you give an example?
Sure, take a sentence like, caffeine was an amazing aid to the rise of capitalism. When someone says that naturally, your ear will probably pick up caffeine, amazing aid, rise, and capitalism more strongly than the other words.
Ah, I see. So those stressed words become like little signposts.
Exactly. They guide you to the most important bits of information in the sentence, even if you maybe miss some of the little connecting words in between. Our expert used an example from Michael Pollan to show this.
Right. So training your ear to catch those stresses helps you get the core meaning.
Precisely, even if you don't catch every single syllable. Now, the second bottom-up strategy is about noticing intonation patterns.
Ooh, intonation. Yeah, that can feel a bit tricky sometimes, can it? It's not always explicitly taught.
It definitely can. Those rises and falls in pitch can seem quite subtle.
Mm-hmm.
But while there aren't always hard and fast rules for every single situation, there are common intonation patterns that carry meaning.
Like what?
Well, for example, questions that you can answer with a simple yes or no, they often have a rising intonation right at the very end.
Okay, yeah, like, do you like it? Your voice goes up.
Exactly. And say sentences that have 2 main parts, like an if-then sentence.
Yeah.
Often you get a rising tone on the first part and then a falling tone on the second part.
If I did this, I would do that. Rise, then fall.
You got it. And another common one is lists. When we list things, our voice usually rises on each item
Fee.
until the very last one where it falls to signal the end. Coffee, tea, and beer. Up, up, down.
It's almost musical when you point it out.
It kind of is. And recognizing these patterns, even subconsciously, can give you subtle but really crucial clues about what the speaker means and how their message is structured.
Okay, stressed words, intonation patterns. What's the third one?
The third bottom-up strategy is noticing chunks.
Chunks.
Yeah, chunks. This is where groups of individual words often blend together in natural, fast speech, so they almost sound like one single unit.
Ah, right. Like how did you want to go? Often
Wow.
becomes something like, do you want to go?
Exactly. Or want to becomes wanna, going to becomes gonna. Those individual sounds just merge together.
So they sound like one block of sound almost.
Precisely. And the expert recommends a really practical technique for getting the hang of this.
Okay.
Listen to a sentence, maybe from a show or a recording. Try to repeat it exactly as you heard it. Then look the transcript or subtitles to see which actual words made up those fast blended chunks.
Ah, so you break it down.
Yeah, you see the individual words.
Okay.
Then you practice saying it again, trying to capture that natural chunking.
Okay.
The example given was from a comedy Zoom call where the question, how did you end up opening up food spots? Sounded much more like, how'd you end up opening up food
And
spots?
you end up, yeah, I can hear that. It's much faster, much more blended.
Right. So identifying and actually practicing these chunks does two things. One, it improves your ability to understand rapid natural speech when you hear it.
Makes sense.
And two, it actually trains your own speech muscles to produce those sounds, making you sound more fluent.
So it helps listening and speaking. That's fantastic. Like that two sides of the same coin idea again.
Exactly. It really reinforces that connection.
Are there any tools that can help with this kind of practice, especially the chunking and intonation?
Actually, yes. The expert specifically recommended the Woodpecker Learning app as a really good resource for practicing these bottom-up strategies.
Woodpecker learning. Okay.
Yeah, apparently it has curated YouTube videos that come with interactive transcripts.
Oh, nice.
You can tap on words to get definitions, say vocabulary, and importantly, it lets you automatically repeat short phrases or sentences over and over again.
Oh, that sounds perfect for focusing on chunks or intonation patterns, looping the sound.
Exactly. And it apparently even integrates with Netflix if you're using an iPad, so you can use it with shows you're already watching.
Wow, that sounds incredibly useful. Having the transcript right there, being able
Yeah.
to loop those tricky phrases. Yeah, I can see how that would really help break down those chunks and hear the intonation clearly.
Absolutely. And again, as you actively focus on these things, the stressed words, the intonation, the
Right.
chunks when you're listening, that awareness naturally starts to bleed into your own speaking. It helps you improve your own pronunciation, your rhythm, your overall fluency.
So it's really not about choosing, like, am I a top-down person or a bottom-up person?
Not at all.
It's about using both together.
Exactly right. Effective language learning, effective communication really, involves this dynamic dance between the two.
A dance, I like that.
Yeah. You might start with top-down strategies to get the general lay of the land, the context, the main idea,
Mm-hmm.
and then you switch gears, zoom in with bottom-up strategies to focus on specific details, maybe clarify something you missed or pick up new vocabulary. You use different ones at different times, depending on what you need.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Use the right tool for the job at hand.
Precisely.
Now, for that sort of extra bonus bit our expert source mentioned, some recommendations for TV series and other resources to help practice all this.
Yes, absolutely. This is a great way to just immerse yourself, expose yourself to a whole range of accents, different ways of speaking, different contexts. Variety is key.
So what kind of shows were suggested?
Okay, so for action series, Killing Eve is mentioned. That's the British spy thriller.
Right, good one.
And also his Dark Materials, which is more of a fantasy drama. So different vibes, different language styles.
Okay, good variety there. What about comedies?
For sitcoms, Ted Lasso came out.
Oh, everyone loves Ted Lasso.
Right. Great for that mix of American Coach and the UK setting.
Mhm.
Lots of natural everyday English, plus those cultural references that could be so useful to understand.
Definitely.
And also Mythic Quest, which is set in a video game company. Again, good for contemporary conversational English.
Yeah, Ted Lasso especially highlights those subtle differences between American and British English, too. It's like a lesson in itself sometimes.
It really is. Then moving on to news and current events.
Okay.
The recommendation was Good Morning Britain for maybe a slightly more lighthearted take, and Panorama for more serious, in-depth investigative reports.
Right, so you get different levels of formality and vocabulary depth there. News programs can be really rich for learning idioms and specific terminology.
Exactly. And then in the drama category, Little Fires Everywhere, the family drama,
Mm-hmm.
and The Handmaid's Tale, the dystopian series.
Yeah.
Both were suggested for capturing natural-sounding conversations, but also sometimes more, let's say, colorful or expressive language.
Colorful language, like slang.
Yeah, potentially including some slang. And the expert made a good point there. It's really useful to understand slang when you hear it, so you're not lost.
Right.
But you need to be a bit careful about using it yourself, especially in more formal situations, like, say, an IELTS speaking test or a job interview. Context is key.
That's a really important distinction. Understand it, yes. Use it appropriately, also yes.
Exactly. Then, for documentaries, The Social Dilemma about social media and Cowspiracy about climate change were recommended.
Okay, big topics.
Yeah, great for exploring diverse subjects and picking up the specialized vocabulary that goes with them. And CuriosityStream was mentioned as a platform, just a great resource generally for high-quality documentaries on loads of different subjects.
Documentaries are fantastic for that, aren't they? You can really dive deep into something you're interested in and boost your language skills.
Totally. And finally, for just getting a feel for natural, everyday chit-chat on popular topics, chat shows were suggested.
Like,
The Ellen Show and The Late Show with Stephen Colbert were the examples given.
okay. Yeah, chat shows are perfect for seeing how native speakers interact, interrupt each other, tell stories in a more relaxed, informal way.
Exactly. You get unscripted moments, different guests, a real mix.
So quite a list of resources there.
Definitely something for everyone, hopefully.
So let's try and wrap this up then. We've explored these two main approaches. Top-down, seeing the big picture using context,
Right, the bird's eye view.
and bottom-up, zooming in on the details like stressed words, intonation, those blended chunks of sound.
Focusing on the trees.
And the key takeaway is that the real magic happens when you use them together, adapting your approach as needed.
Precisely. It's an integrated skill.
And we touched on tools like that Woodpecker app and how watching a diverse range of TV and other content can really support this whole process.
Absolutely. Practice and exposure.
Ultimately, it feels like it's about becoming a more, well, active and engaged listener and speaker. You're constantly shifting between that wide lens and the magnifying glass.
That's a great way to put it.
So now that you, listening, are equipped with these strategies and maybe some new resource ideas, here's something to think about. What kind of content are you now inspired to explore? What could help you deepen your understanding and, just as importantly, express yourself more effectively?
Yeah, maybe take a moment to think about your current learning habits. How could you weave some of these techniques, even just one or two to start, into how you listen and how you speak?
Which leads to maybe a final thought to chew on.
Go for it.
Which of these strategies, top down or bottom up, or maybe a specific technique like noticing chunks, which one feels like it could make the biggest difference for you right now? And what specific language challenge are you hoping it might help you tackle?
That's a great prompt. Really thinking about how applying these ideas actively could potentially change your whole experience with the language. It's not just theory, it's about practical application.